Welcome everyone to the Kendall Report. It is Tuesday night and we're coming into midweek and markets just continue to rally. Yesterday S&P up 1.1, NASDAQ up 2.0, and the Russell up 1.1 basically. So we continue to go on. I guess if I talked about last night the cycle high that was coming in, and what better way to get a cycle high but to print a high in a sequence. So we're definitely still on with that. And in fact, I named this video tonight, Cycle High Signaled. And a reason why it looks like we're going to get a high, I'll show you in the technical section here in a few minutes, that we should start some kind of pullback. It's possible, and I'll go through all these details in a minute, is that we could extend for 2 more days, and I'll break that down here shortly. As far as news, it was interesting just kind of looking around, seeing what people were talking about. People meaning, financial sites. Nobody had an explanation for the rally yesterday, or today, right on Tuesday. It just absolutely, market participants reevaluating war impact, stuff like that, right? No one had any real reason why we saw this big bid come in. And there is a bit of a stampede mentality. And I watched this since 2020, been around these markets a long time. And what I've been seeing is these stampedes, and they always used to exist, but they tend to keep running. There's more cows in the herd, so to speak. So you're pushing more and more people through the door. And the last guy may have went through today, maybe not. And then I'm not looking at some kind of major top and big reversal. Anything's possible. What I'm looking at is still looking for a slight retracement, and that's most likely what we're going to see. But there's just nothing in the news, and there's no economic news. Tomorrow we have new home sales coming out. Expected to be 827K, but does anyone really care about that? I'm not sure. We've watched the 10-year shoot up even more. I know I'll talk about this in a little bit. The big dilemma out there is which metric is the important one. I always tell you folks, watch the 530. There's people out the 210s, all kinds of different things. And a lot of these are inverting, and we're even seeing, what we're seeing is not only just inverting, but we're seeing the entire yield curve flatten out. And that does have its impact on the economy and other things. And I'll continue to watch that very closely. The 530s, which I'll show you here shortly, uptick just slightly. So, but still below some key levels that I've been talking about. But, just really, I was thinking, what am I going to talk about tonight? Well, there's nothing to really talk about, which is always weird and sort of eerie. There's nothing that's standing out right now. No one cares about the war. I didn't mean they don't care about the war. The market participants aren't talking about the war. I said that a number of weeks ago when it all started. What did the Ukraine have to do with the corporate profits in the U.S.? Well, there are some impacts, right? We know fertilizer, and there's a lot of the foods and wheat, and there are plenty of impacts actually. But are they material? I'm not saying there's no impact, but are they material? And that's what I'm always looking for, to trying to figure out what's material. It's interesting, and the other night I went through the longer term viewpoint. I talked about some numbers. I'll continue to follow those. We're a week away from the deadline in determining what's going on. It appears that a lot of folks on my channel and comments that, we're just going straight up vertical from here. Not sure that's the case. Certainly is possible for that to happen. I'm just not seeing the type of things on the intermediates that we need to see to have that happen. There's still underlying long-term trends. There's a lot of things out there, but I don't know about V-bottoms and vertical moves. Anything's possible. Having said that, and I'll go through the database here in a minute, we have had over 8,500 new buy signals, and I was reviewing some of those, and I'm going to go through a little bit more in depth here in the database. Since there's not a lot to talk about, let's go ahead and get into the database right now. Okay, as we look at the database, it's upticked again up to 52.19 percent bullish. We're looking at basically 1,044 buy signals, 154 sell. So once again, we have bullish ratios on both models and pushing up to 52%, which is impressive to say the least. What I want to show you here is a couple things, and I want to break this down just a little bit further. And we'll look at the sectors here and what's been purchased. Now, the basic materials has been long for 28 days, but let's look at some of the new stuff. In the last two and three sessions, we've seen conglomerates come on, consumer non-cyclical, energy is a new buy in a short-term level, and the intermediate, it's been long for a long time. That will ebb in and out, but financial is long for the last 3 days. It's got 1.5% gain, and this is on the sector level, right? So there's quite a few symbols in these sectors. So this is more like a composite view of each one of these. In 4 sessions, healthcare has moved up 2.5%, and we're just seeing the only two flat positions right now, consumer cyclical and transportation, and utilities was a new buy after today, which is interesting, looking at what actually happened with the interest rates. So as we look at really the overall view of what the sectors are doing, we're seeing a lot of sectors roll in. This is all very positive. So I'm not against the ideas that we're going to see a further rally here. In fact, I would expect it from here. The typical holding period here, I'm just going to go back to the all stats page here for a second, and I'll show you some numbers here. I'll just leave it on this screen. I'll discuss them. But we're right now, we're 10 days into an average 40-day hold. So we still have 30 days, and these are 30 trading days. So there's still a decent amount of time. That's the better part of 5 weeks. So as I look at what's unfolding here in the database, there's still a lot to unfold. Some of these trades I was looking at, there's been some monster trades. And I don't know if you folks haven't taken a look. You should take a look at WaveTech, because there's 8,000 symbols, and I'm willing to bet you missed a lot of really good trades that you didn't know were happening that you could have known about. But anyway, the patterns that are unfolding here are really coming out really strong. And like I said, if we go back maybe when we got last week, we got a cycle low in the S&P and in the NASDAQ last Tuesday, and we've seen just a ton of buys going. In fact, I'll net them out roughly. There's basically 15,000 buys, but there was also about 3,000 sells. So there's been a lot of rotation going on here, but a heck of a lot more buys than sells, and that's over the last 2 weeks actually. So there's a lot of rotation that's going on. Let's take a look at the S&P and dig into tonight's show. So as we look at the S&P, we can see this nice rally. I talked about this in last night's video, and this is the signal for the cycle, which came in yesterday. We're down a whopping 25 cents right now, so it's not like it's inverting. But what's interesting is we're seeing the PPMs downtick, and this has happened before, not necessarily with the cycle on top, but if we go over here to February 9th, we saw the PPM1 turn down. We're turning down from a higher level. What's likely to happen here is to fall back into these moving averages. And this is the same analysis that I talked about last night, is that we come back into somewhere between 4380, a possibility. 4400 is still a key number. Now that we're at 4,500, that sounds like a big number, but it's really within expectations here, just because we're looking at the market grid for tomorrow. Let's bring that up. For the overnight, and we're looking at R1 45.24. We've had a high of 13 overnight. And actually that happened, I think, right after the close of the cash today. The low 44.99, 86, 44.86 is S1, S2 44.64. I think there's a possibility of printing down there. There's really, like I said, there's nothing coming out tomorrow. There's nothing that's going to news related that that I'm aware of. This is all going to be sentiment, maybe some profit taking, and this is most likely the scenario that we're going to see here. One of the things I want to talk about is right now, this is, if we count from that cycle low, today is the 7th day. We could get one more day in this pattern before it hits. Typically, when these cycles come in, what I look for is within 1 to 2 sessions. If we close below the low of the session where it was signaled, which was today's session on Tuesday, then we'll get some reaction off that number, or that's what I would expect off of here. Now, it doesn't always have to just reverse immediately, but they're pretty accurate when they come in. Within a couple of days, we'll see some type of backfilling or the pattern. And the pattern that we're looking at looks to me like we should at least set back into the moving averages, and then that will be a buying opportunity, and then we could start to look at an expectation. And I'll just draw that in very quickly. This is something I talk a lot about in the live room when we're doing intraday trading. You look for these patterns, but this, what we would look for is something that looks like this, and then the length of this would be extrapolated out and suggest that we would come up into a length like this. So this could be pretty bullish. This could set up a retest of the 48.18 level. I'm not sure that's going to happen, but this is a possibility here. And what my expectation would be, typically I'm looking at 1 and 3 being equal, but in this case, it might be only 0.382, 0.618. We had a similar setup from there. So if we do get the setback for a couple days into that 43.80, 43.60, something like that, that will set up the possibilities for this next move up, and I'll be talking about that. So the database is certainly getting a lot of traction. There's certainly a reason to believe that we're going to see continued movement. I just told you that right now that the database is expected to have at least a holding period of 8,500 plus symbols right now that just generated buys have a holding period at least of 30 more trading days, so 5 weeks. So what we're looking at here, 5 weeks would be, maybe a 21-day cycle off the lows. There'd be a lot of bars that are likely to unfold in here. So I'm reasonably positive right now off of this, just looking for a little correction. This thing can extend. We've seen scenarios before where they just keep going. Well, that's what we've seen so far, just this relentless buying that's coming on. And the algos were running things, no doubt, yesterday. There was a lot of opportunity scalping around with them yesterday. And I think everybody was hanging out today in the live trading room. That was kind of fun to do. So anyway, what we'll do in the next couple of days is watch for this pullback, and that's going to be a buy. I didn't put it up here, but 2 days ago, and I really kind of scolded myself before I came on tonight, is actually 3 sessions ago, we did get a model buy on the S&P. So I should have had that up there. I'll be better about watching for those signals. But the key level was going back to last Tuesday and the reversal, and I was expecting at least 2 to 3 days up. Well, we got 6 days up. and they just continued on. And we traded within the confines. Yesterday, intraday, the R3 number was 45.15, so we were basically getting some reversals and rejections off of there, and that's where there was a lot of play just above 4,500 and trading between 45.90 down to 80 handle a little bit, and then back and forth. So there was quite a bit of opportunity within that grind. Next, I'll cover the NASDAQ. And NASDAQ is flat overnight. We're at 14,640. Same kind of configuration. Same thing here. Cycle came in yesterday. We closed at 14,654. So we closed just below the RXT number. Like I said, we're basically sideways overnight. Same kind of numbers here would be down to the 40, would be down at 14,171, potential to come into 13,950. That would be basically the expectations for a little pullback here. PPM's turning down, same configuration basically. We look at the expectations for today, probably an R1 17,747, possibility of 14,461 if we can get a little bit of a pullback here and just see if there's just some profit taking that comes in after this big rally that we've seen. Next, I'll cover the Russell. Russell continues to stay above its averages. It's traded down yesterday down to the 2066 level. S1 was 2057, so R1 2074, R2 84. So we traded up we actually did hit at R3 yesterday on the Russell. This has a little different scenario, and this is still basically leading the markets from the standpoint of what the PPMs look like. They're much stronger looking. You see PPM 2 is still accelerating. PPM 1 is accelerating. We're 0.62, 0.19 on PPM 2. So we've got a strong look here. It still could just see a couple days sideways and move on. And if the Russell can continue to rally here, we're likely to see it lead the way, and that is what I've been talking about here. It just has a little bit stronger picture. And going back a couple weeks ago, I was talking about this may be the market that leads us off the lows, and it looks like that's what's going on there. Next market is the 10-year. Lot to talk about here. We got an RXT sell signal, meant nothing. This sharp move up is just continuing. We're finally starting to see maybe a little bit of a stall here in the 10-year. All of a sudden, here we are printing up at 2.39, 2.4. I'll have to go to the weekly charts to bring in this, but look at the PPMs across the board, all the way down to the WaveTech 200. We're seeing this acceleration here just across the board, and that rising 10-period moving average is coming up underneath the market right now, and it is moving right now about 6 bips per day. So all of a sudden, we're going to be having support at 220 on this market. And then if we can just get stability here, if it just doesn't keep going vertical. But it looks to me that there's a good chance that we're finishing a 5-wave pattern, I'm just going to draw this in very quickly so you can see this, that there is a mini 5-wave coming here. And here we go right here. 1, 2, this is 3, this is wave 4, and this is your wave 5. I mean, it's almost perfect symmetrical from that standpoint. What would set up next would be some kind of ABC pattern, and typically you come back to wave 4 of previous degree, would put us down at 210, 214, somewhere along that line in that 10 period moving average in that pattern. As far as the yield curve goes, there was a slight uptick here in the 530, not by much, it's at 0.20. We continue to see the 10-year just stay under that 0.22. I'm still not convinced on the whole scenario about the recession at this time, but this, for me to join that camp, we're going to have to see an inversion here on the 10-year. And as I showed you, it wasn't since 2006 since that really happened. And in 2006, it was substantial inversion there. So I don't know where this is going. I'm just watching. The trend is clearly down, this breakdown, but we're also could be, there's an argument here for 5 waves down in this yield curve as well. So all of a sudden things could start to stabilize and look a lot different, and maybe see some stability from the standpoint of the 10-year start to flatten out and just start to go into somewhat of a sideways range, and this yield curve not be so crazy. So you have to watch it. There's no way to, at this phase, to predict it. It's at, like I said, there's an argument for a 5-wave pattern down right now, which would suggest that the yield curve in the 530s is completing. There's still a lot of work to be done here from that standpoint. Next market I'll look at here is the crude oil. Crude oil is setting up a pattern here that's starting to look more and more bullish. We're looking at ppm 1 is now at 0.23, 0.89 on ppm 2, but you see it crossing back over after that little dip here. Now we're starting to accelerate to the upside. We're just about in a uptrend again on the short term. That's going to suggest 103, 104 should be your support levels on crude here. We should continue to see that actually just hold right in that range. We also have 103.99, which is 104 is the 21-day moving average. That is substantial. And then, of course, there's some big objectives up here. Not sure they'll be hit, but they're there. Fibonacci 135 plus. So those are big numbers. And as far as crude goes, anything can happen here because there's a lot of crazy talk on the geopolitical scene here. And it would appear that there's somewhat of a proxy war going on that could, who knows, it could expand very quickly. And so what we're looking at from this standpoint is the key pivot number, I mentioned this the other night, is 118.60. So if we break above 118.60, that 135 handle all of a sudden starts looking a little more realistic. At the moment, we're probably just setting up some sort of large consolidation. We're likely to stay, in worst case, above 96 and probably below that 120 level, rounding off that 118 handle. Next market is gold. Sort of interesting, some of the patterns that are starting to emerge out of gold. We did get this cycle low that came in the next day was the bottom. So we're setting up a little bit of a pattern here that could end to be bullish. There's some new Fibonacci targets out, or even higher than the previous one that was hit. 2095, 2171, 2219. Seem a little far-fetched right now, but I've seen these kind of clusters come out very similar to, if you see where my cursor is over here, let me move this out of the way. Over here, we got it. We had this Fibonacci cluster, then it recalculated, and these numbers, we came right into these numbers. A lot of time we'll see this, and then they'll recalculate like they did here, a little bit lower, and then those numbers end up getting hit as well on the next rally. And as I've talked about, this is a daily chart. If we go over to the weekly, we have that rising 10 pattern in the grid. It's at 0.54 right now on a weekly, 0.34. Really, all we have to do is hold above that 10-period moving average, which right now is 1886. So it's a bit under there. As long as we stay above that, we should see some acceleration again and start to come back into the market grid. The other thing that will happen after this week is the market grid will start to contract a little bit. We'll probably have the lower bounds of the market grid be right around the 10-week moving average. Should come right in there. But you look at PPM3 is starting to accelerate here. And that's a very positive sign, especially since this is an intermediate chart. Next market is Bitcoin. Bitcoin continues to hold those support levels that I talked about. This is the weekly, so we'll see the update. We're coming right into the 21 and 40 periods moving averages. They're almost exactly the same value, 46,022, 46,063. That number is major resistance. Support right now, 39,325. We stay above that. During this week, we should start to see some acceleration. The downward pressure is still evident on the intermediate, so that 46 number will probably be closer to 44, 45 will still be resistance. So we're not going to break out of this pattern just yet, but the PPMs are all lining up on the intermediate to suggest that there is a good chance of that. Let's go and end with the daily chart here. And they're interesting. We've been getting these clusters of cycles here. I'm not sure what it means. Those typically only happen when we get in one of these elongated basing periods like this. So there's a cycle due again today. That cycle will be completed here in a couple hours. This chart is a 24-hour chart, updates at midnight Eastern time. So as soon as that updates, then we'll have the patterns start to possibly accelerate a little bit more, but it's so flat in the last several sessions, I don't have much of an expectation, but same numbers as before, just that 39.3 support. And on this particular market, we do have some Fibonacci's that are coming in just about, let me bring that up on screen so you can see it. They are at 43.2, 45. So everything's pointing 43, 44, 45 as major resistance. And it looks like from this viewpoint that there's really not a high probability that we're going to break out right now, but it looks like as long as we can stay above that 39.3, we should be okay. Okay, folks, that's going to do the broadcast for tonight. I appreciate, as always, that you are watching. I also want to propose, possibly tomorrow night, that we do a mini interactive live screen. So maybe I'll do maybe 4 to 5 stocks or something like that, or I'll interact with you on the timeline. I normally don't do that. I'm just looking, I got one foot out the door and just trying to finish and get to to dinner. So anyway, but that we'll consider that. If just come prepared. Hammer on me on the timeline. I'll make sure I'm paying attention. And those folks that are even got our indicators, obviously you should have your invite to our live trading room. You get a full month there. Just go to the kendallreport.com/indicators. You can sign up there, one-time fee. You get a month free in our live room. Tomorrow's all about trading E-minis. So anyway, get signed up, and I look forward to seeing you there. It's cool seeing a lot of handles that I see on YouTube show up here. So that's kind of cool to finally see you guys and out there. And typically what we do in the live room, about every, several meetings, we just do a Zoom and we have an interactive meeting. And sometimes we'll even do a special Friday meeting. Anyway, folks, thanks again for watching. I really appreciate it. And I will see you all tomorrow night. And those of you in the live room, see you there. Thanks a lot. Hey, Dustin, why do you watch? Go away. I love guys like you. Put your link to your channel. We'll listen to you tomorrow night. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it. Really do. Yeah, I just see that talk on the GME. For the record, WaveTech bought GME on the open this morning. All right, folks, have a great evening.